I've read the sub for a while, but never figured that I would have anything to post. But something wild happened to my girlfriend and I at Burger King a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't necessarily creepy, but definitely scary. Here we go. We ordered a bunch of food, got our drinks, and sat down at the table near the corner of the restaurant. A minute after we order, a guy goes up to the counter and orders. He wasn't out of place, so I didn't notice anything about him for a few minutes. He sits down where you would typically sit if you are waiting for a to-go order. And the first thing that got our attention was, as a kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, ran past him. He loudly says, "Atheist," at the kid in an accusing tone. He then was milling about, talking into a radio-like box about how he needed to move to the North Pole. It was seconds after this that I noticed he was staring at us, as I made brief eye contact with him several times to check that he was indeed staring. He then walked over and sat at a table right next to my girlfriend and I. Great. He then starts babbling to some imaginary person, saying, I don't know. Homeless and mentally ill are pretty common in this area, especially this side of town, so we are on edge, but not surprised at his behavior. The lady working calls for order 179. The guy says, "They were before me," motioning to us since he apparently forgot his number. The lady says, "2 cheeseburgers," and he again insisted that it might be our food. But this time I realized what was happening, and I said, "Oh yeah, we are 178. At this point, he snapped and totally lost it on me. "You Californians need to learn to open your mouth," as he grabbed his food and began walking in my direction to the exit. I mustered up what fight or flight response I had at the moment to say, "Have a nice day, see ya," as he approached the door, and the crazy guy continued to cuss at me, calling me names and so on. A few more words were exchanged, but I made sure to stand my ground by not saying anything off color as he made his way out. As he left, he apparently continued to scream at us through the window. All the employees and customers in the place were looking at me in shock, and I was shocked too. The part that bothers me about this interaction is that in the moment as he walked past me, I saw in his eyes how removed from reality he was, whether that was because of drugs or mental illness, or a combination. He was also much larger than me, so if he wanted to hurt me or my girlfriend, he likely could have. I just remembered this. It's one of those memories that isn't extremely terrifying enough to remember, but it's eerie enough to stay in your mind for a good while. I would say I was about 13 years old when this happened. At the time, I lived in a small town, and there was a girl who was a few years younger than me that had gone missing. It had been a big deal and they had found her body, and while apparently she had been tortured before her death, it was a big deal. Obviously, it made parents paranoid about who they let their children be around. And so back to my experience. My mom took me to Burger King. It was close to our apartment and we went there the days that she was too tired from work to cook. She went to get the food and I sat at the booth playing with the paper for my straw, and this man came in and came up to me. It was like he came into the building and looked around until he spotted me, and then came over to where I was sitting. The guy, I don't think that he was homeless, and maybe he was. He had this odd smell to him and his clothes were ripped and dirty. He kept his hands stuffed in his jean pockets and kept moving them around and swaying back and forth, while standing and looking down at me, and he kept smiling and it was so creepy. I just sort of smiled at him and said, "Hi," and I hoped that he would go away, and figured he couldn't do anything because it was a small building full of employees, and my mom was just a few feet away. Note, my mom didn't notice the guy yet. He started talking to me. I remember that, and he had the kind of voice that makes you feel gross. He just stared at me and was talking about the girl who went missing and was found dead. It wasn't like a casual topic. He had this glint in his eyes that was exciting to him. What had happened, and exciting for him to be talking about it to a young girl. He started on about how he heard that what had happened to the girl was all about sex. Which, when you're very young, and some creepy man who hasn't bathed in probably weeks is saying things about sex to you, and the way that he said it was so intense, it was just freaky. Like the whole situation is messed up, and I was creeped out and this guy was standing very close to me, like blocking my side of the booth. It was like he knew that if he didn't stand nearly pressed to my side, that I would get up and leave this charming conversation. Thankfully, before he could tell me anything more about what he was thinking, my mom noticed him and came over asking him what the hell he wanted and why he was talking to me. He got wide-eyed, jumped away and laughed. A few employees ran out after him to see who he was, what he looked like, because they were caught between wanting to call the cops and make sure to never let him into the building again. I remember being shaken up really badly. My mom was freaked out. She had plans on buying me mace and all sorts of things after that incident. The thing is that, after that, I was paranoid that I'd run into him again. Small town, that stuff happens. Like a few times I swear I saw him riding a bike when I would be in the car with my mom. And another time I thought I saw him in a shop that we were in. Of course I was young, he was gross. And I was paranoid, so I doubt I really did see him. It was late at night. I'm not sure of the exact time, but I'm going to guess around midnight. And for some reason, my best friend, Lainey, and I decided to go for a walk. I really can't remember why. Probably to go to the 24-hour pharmacy to get drinks, or maybe just pass the time since there's really nothing to do at that time of night. And she was staying at my house for a few weeks. But we did. We were walking up my street in the direction of wherever we were going. We got decently far up and everything seemed fine. I didn't have a purse on me or anything, but Lainey did. So when we saw a man wearing baggy pants and a bright red hoodie, with the hood up and a hand in his pocket walking towards us, we went single file to one side of the sidewalk, and I went first, as we didn't want the one with valuables to be in front. Once we got past him, Lainey told me that she had a bit of a bad feeling. She turned back to look at him and I looked at her, and I could clearly see that she didn't look happy, and so I looked back too. And just as I did, I watched him stop walking as well. He mirrored our actions and turned to look at us, and he stared in our direction. A few seconds passed of us just staring at each other, and so Lainey and I broke the moment as we turned and kept walking the way we were. She said that she still had that bad feeling after a few steps, so we both turned our heads back again, and he was now walking in our direction. There were, if I remember correctly, maybe 5 meters between us, and the second we realized he was walking, we turned to keep going as well. Thankfully, we were near an intersection. When we got to it, we turned to check again, and sure enough, he was still coming our way. So we turned right onto Apple Street. We went up it for a bit and checked again, and you guessed it, he was still following us. So we kept going up Apple and crossed the street halfway up to a stop at a Burger King. It was closed since it was so late, but the lights around implying that there were workers inside cleaning and closing up, and there were 2 cars in the parking lot. We felt like we could just wait it out there, as people were around, and so that was what we decided to do. Once we got to the Burger King parking lot, we looked back and he was cutting diagonally up this field space towards us. We went to the opposite side of the BK, and now we were on a different street, called Orange, and went up it to the right, the direction that we were going on Apple. We got to the top of the street and looked back, and nobody was there. So we turned right onto the street that connects Apple and Orange, called Banana. We went along it towards Apple and then back down Apple towards where we came from originally. We got a bit down it, and Lainey said that she had that bad feeling again. We look around and he's standing on the corner of Banana and Apple. We run back down Apple to BK and look back once more, once we get there. It looks like he's going further up on Apple, and therefore away from us. Which is clearly good, but we don't feel safe enough to go home yet, so we stayed there for about 20 minutes. During this time, this is irrelevant to the story, but it still upsets me to this day. A car pulled up to us and asked if we were okay, because I guess we looked clearly shaken. Lainey said yes, but the man was following us and we didn't know what to do. The guy in the car looked around and didn't see anyone, and said to call the police then, before promptly driving off. No, yeah, let's just call the police. There's a strange man following us, but he's been gone for 15 minutes now. No, he never harmed us. Yeah, he stayed about 5 to 10 meters behind us the whole time. No, he never even talked to us. I would tell them. They'll sure treat that as a top priority and send people out straight away. Anyway, after a little longer, we felt like it was about time to head back home since he didn't seem to be returning. We were standing in the BK parking lot closest to Orange Street, and we were just doing our double checks around to make sure that he was gone. Lainey was looking towards Apple and I was looking towards Orange. The fear I felt in this moment is one that I can't describe. There is some big trees against the building on Orange side, and remember, it was dark out. And Lainey is not paying attention to Orange. Thank God I was. I see a figure slowly emerge down the street from the tree canopy. And they're wearing red, the only color that I can see, with their hood up and a hand being put back into their pocket. I don't even want to know what he had. I inhaled sharply and immediately grabbed Lainey's arm on instinct and yanked her as hard as I could as I charged off towards Apple Street. The adrenaline made me forget the exact, finite details of every movement in this moment, so I don't know for sure if she protested or not. All I know is that I was pulling her towards Apple Street as hard as I could, and to this day, I say it's a true testament of how much I care for her. Since she knows in situations like this, people can leave others behind to save themselves. And honestly, I know my care for her is what made me react that way because I'm the type of person to freeze in fear, unless someone I care about is in danger as well. The figure went all the way up Apple to the next block, turned left to the connecting street between Apple and Orange, not Banana as it's a new block now, and came back down it again. The drive-thru of Burger King is on the Apple side. I yank her over there and throw her with me against the drive-thru wall, as it's at an angle that gave us cover from him going down Orange. We pressed against the wall, waited a little, and then peeked around the corner and he was just going past a building down Orange. Until then, I lost sight of him. We were panicking very badly now. We waited a little longer, maybe 5 minutes, and then decided to check if he was gone again. Lainey didn't want to move in case he started coming towards us on Apple, and when you go to Orange, buildings block your view of it, so she stayed there while I went over to Orange. I looked up it and down it, and he was nowhere. Relieved, I turned to start walking back towards Lainey, but as I turned to do so, I caught sight of him. He was coming straight for me, diagonally and through the field between Apple and Orange's buildings, just like he had when we got to BK the first time. He was about 15 to 20 meters away. Frozen, I turned to Lainey fully. She was far from me but was close enough to see my expression, and I could see hers. I pointed frantically in his direction, and she looked confused but scared, which told me that she hadn't noticed him. I was mouthing, "It's him," but she only looked more confused, so I could tell she wasn't reading my lips properly, probably due to the distance. In panic, with no other conceivable option, I started running towards her and waving her over. Complying, she started running to me. As she did, she noticed him and ran faster. We met in the middle of the parking lot. By this point, he was very close to us, and the 2 cars in the parking lot were still there. As one faces the cars from our current position, On the left, there was a man in his, and on the right, there was a parking space between the two cars, where two teen boys were in theirs. We darted to and around the teen boy's car as it was closest and sat in front of it, our legs under to shield ourselves as much as possible. By this point, I was visibly shaking, and Lainey was full on crying, like sob crying. She was trying to keep quiet, but you could tell even from inside the car that we were in trouble. And I knew the boys noticed because they looked at us in shock and then behind them to see what we were looking at, and just stared at the man, immobile. Now as we're sitting in front of the car, we can't see him because he's adjacent to us with the car blocking our vision. I'm sitting on the left while she's sitting on the right, so she's on the side that he would emerge from when he entered her view. I couldn't see him unless I went around the car or sat up, while she could just peek to the side. Which he did as he kept going to orange, which made her shove herself into me in an attempt to get out of his view once she saw him. Sadly, this block didn't pin me under the car a little, and I couldn't move as she was on my legs. We were trying to keep silent due to the fact that if he decided to look to his right, he could clearly see us. But she was crying harder now and I was trying to get her off of me so we could dart to the man's car. Eventually, she got the message, after the initial fear and shock of seeing him that froze her in place wore off. So she sat back so I could move, and we ran to the far side of the man's car. During all of this, by the way, all three people in their cars were looking from us, to the guy, to us, and to the guy, doing absolutely nothing. Not even asking if we were okay or showing any emotion other than vague curiosity. As two 17 to 18-year-old girls are sobbing and shaking, and literally doing Mission Impossible shit around some cars in the dead of night, with a hooded figure in view, only a few meters away. I'll never forgive those people, and it's why I still think we were technically in danger. Because if the man decided to turn and charge at us, there's nothing we could have done. And I strongly doubt the boys or the man in the cars would have done anything either. We sat there for a little, peeking over the top of the car, until the man turned and went up orange towards Banana. As soon as we lost sight of him, we decided it was time to go, because clearly every time we thought he was gone, we were sorely mistaken. And so we shot up, went back down Apple, and booked it all the way home. We never saw him again and made a vow to never go out at night again. Never have, and I never will unless I have a male with me. And I picked up a pocket knife and a pin alarm. You pull out the pin and the device shrieks, only stopping when that specific pin is put back in, shortly thereafter. They're still in my purse and will never be taken out. So, I went to Burger King and forgot to grab my drink in the drive-thru window, but it was too late to reverse. So I go to the front, park my car close to the entrance, and leave the car on to quickly grab my drink and leave. The only reason that I left it on was because my mom was with my child in the back seat, which is where my mom normally sits to entertain my baby while I drive. My windows in the back are tinted so you can't really see anyone back there unless you're close up, and it was kind of dark out. I got my drink and went to my car in less than half a minute, and I see this guy who was close to my driver door, and he quickly turns when he sees me, kind of startled, and asked if I can spare any change, and I said no, sorry, and I quickly got into my car. When I pull out, this girl goes to him and they're both whispering something, and staring at me like they were up to something. I quickly got this gut-wrenching feeling that his intentions were bad, and if I hadn't been there as quick as I was, he could have taken my car with my mom and the baby in the back. Maybe he noticed my mom in the back and quickly changed his mind when he got close. I don't know, but I'm so glad it didn't happen. My mom said she obviously wouldn't have left without the baby, but who knows what he would have been capable of. From now on, I always lock the car when I leave, and take the keys out if my mom decides to stay in while I grab something really quick.